Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about science. And in particular, I'm going to talk about one limitation of science that I see a lot of people overlook. And I see a lot of intelligent people overlook this limitation. And I don't think it does them any good, or it doesn't do them much good. So to get there, though, let's kind of talk a little more broadly about science. So, what does science do? Well, science makes observations of nature, right? So maybe you're observing the trees or the animals or the maybe you're observing the laws of physics. Maybe you're observing, I don't know, you're observing humans, right? You make observations about nature or in nature. You make observations about the interactions between things in nature, and then you find patterns in those observations, right? Or patterns in those interactions. And from those patterns, you attempt to declare causation. You attempt to declare cause and effect. So, for example, let's say one day a caveman walks out of a cave after a thunderstorm and there's this giant tree and it's on fire. Okay, a light got struck by lightning. Now, the caveman has never seen fire before. He has no idea what the fire is, but nonetheless, the caveman observes that the fire is warm. And the caveman also observes that the cave was cold. So, well, caveman gets this idea that maybe he can harness the fire inside the cave to improve his quality of life, right? To stay warm during the thunderstorm. So, what does the caveman do? Well, he goes up to the tree that's on fire and burns himself, right? So, can't do that. It's too hot. So, caveman's still curious, so maybe he tries to light a fire, right? And perhaps through a decade of trial and error, he manages to do it. And he has the intuition to not light an entire tree on fire, but maybe to just light like a small bushel of sticks on fire. And before you know it, caveman is happy in the cave around a warm fire cooking up food or something, right? During a thunderstorm. And over time, this causal relationship develops into what we have today, where we are powering entire cities by burning wood chips, right? Or some variation of that. Maybe we're burning wood chips and we're translating that into electricity, and that electricity translates into heat and air conditioning. So you can see very quickly how science is very useful. And again, despite the fact that the caveman didn't have a formal scientific method, he nonetheless participated in the scientific method, whether he knew it or not, or whether he labeled it as a scientific method or not. So, again, as time passes, this scientific method gets kind of distilled and formalized, and we apply it to all the observations that we can possibly make, right? And before long, we're funding giant scientific studies with entire governments and even worldwide organizations, right? So, again, science is a very powerful tool. It enables us to improve our standard of living by learning and by kind of sussing out causal relationships between things in nature. Okay, so where can this go wrong? Well, let's say that I'll give you the very popular example. Let's say that you realize or that you observe that ice cream consumption is correlated with murder rates. And if you're not very observant, you might declare causation. In other words, you might decide to believe that consuming ice cream causes murder, or that murder causes people to consume ice cream, right? But again, if we have our thinking caps on, we can declare that there's probably actually no causal relationship between ice cream consumption and murder rates. There's a third confounding variable that is causing both ice cream consumption rates to increase and murder rates to increase, right? And intuitively, that third variable is probably temperature. So when it's hot outside, people eat more ice cream. When it's hot outside, people are spending more time together, perhaps in the dark at night, and that's when murders typically occur, is at night, right? So, again, the third confounding variable is the temperature. Heat goes up, more people eat more ice cream when the heat goes up, and people spend more time outside at night getting in fights and ultimately murdering each other at night. So we have to be careful when we're declaring causation, right? We have to make sure it's actually causation and it's not correlation or association. But there's one more limitation that I kind of want to really zero in on here. And to do that, provide another example. So there's a study that I see often cited by people that says 95% of diets fail to lead to long-term weight loss. And what that implies is that 5% of the people in that study did manage to lose weight in the long term, right? So 95% failed and 5% succeeded. Now, if you know how to start a fire, you're not going to fail to light wood on fire, right? You know what you're doing. In other words, if you know what you're doing, 100% of the time, you're going to be able to light dry wood on fire, right? So why is this causal relationship between diets and weight loss not so clear cut? Why don't 100% of diets fail? Well, because there's an X factor, and this X factor is what I need you to see here. It's the limitation that I need you to see. The X factor is human consciousness. The X factor is willpower. Okay, it's agency. It's free will. Okay. You can do a scientific study and you can try to account for all of the variables and control for those variables all you want. So maybe you do this diet study and you account for the types of food people are eating. You account for how much water they're drinking. You account for how much exercise they're getting. You account for how much stress they're enduring at work. But still, at the end of the day, you cannot account for willpower. There is no way to measure willpower. So when you declare that 95% of diets fail in a study, and then you project that study onto yourself in the future, you are discounting willpower, okay? You are choosing to project the 95% odds of failure onto yourself and reject the possibility that you could be the 5%. You're overlooking the confounding variable of willpower, okay? And this is a very interesting confounding variable because awareness of something is, in other words, consciousness, to become conscious of this confounding variable is the X factor. Again, it is the thing that enables you to overcome those causal relationships. So maybe what that encourages you to do is to go to that 5% in that study who did succeed at losing weight and determine what they did different. Maybe it was willpower, or maybe it was some other confounding variable that the study failed to control for, right? The point is that you cannot declare causation when human agency is involved in the outcomes, because the human agency, the conscious awareness, is fundamentally changing the variables at a whim, at a moment's whim, right? Believe in yourself. Believe that you can be the 5%. And what might end up happening is one day in the future, humanity might redo this study, and it might be 95% of people who are succeeding at losing weight. And again, this is just an example. You have to understand that what I'm trying to get across here is that when you believe that the 95% odds of failure apply to you, it is that belief that becomes the causal factor that causes the failure, or the effect that causes the effect that is failure. You are identifying with the odds of failure. Identify with the power of your will, and the universe is limitless, right? You are limitless. You cannot discount the power of will. You cannot discount agency. It is an X factor, again, that changes causal relationships. Your consciousness is so powerful, and if you overlook it or discount it because of some past observation among participants of a study who were not you, then you've just given away your power. You've given away your agency. You've surrendered all of this beautiful power that you have to some belief. And that's what you're doing. You are making the belief the cause, okay? You are making the identity with the belief of the 95% odds of failure the cause of your failure. So give that a little thought. Thanks for watching.